Don't you just love the smell of Dawi napalm in the morning? It's a nasty weapon to be sure, but just about the perfect tool for sending a horde of slavering Daemonettes back to the abyss. The Dwarfs of the Kara's Anchor have a flame build here, but against lightning-quick attacks of Sigvald and his freaky femme fatales, they may only have seconds to unleash their payloads before they are overrun. It's one of those matchups that on paper feels really lopsided against the Dawi, almost nightmarish with all that speed and AP to contend with, but never count Belegar and the Purple Dwarfs of Barak Var out of a fight. They may just have some tricks up their sleeve yet. The Squatter King of Clan Angron and his trusty Fane leading the army today on Loopy's Battle Balance mod, but there aren't actually very many changes to highlight in this one. Flame cannons are 200 gold cheaper. That's really the only super impactful element I can find in the patch notes, so it should play a lot like vanilla. 3 Irondrakes will be providing fire support for the 2 flame cannons, Dragonback Slayers patrolling the rear, and then just a host of Longbeards and Warriors, so pretty reliant on shooting against a faction that excels at shutting it down. The thing about Dwarf flame units is they do huge burst damage real fast, especially against unarmored stuff, so if you give them an inch, they can take a mile, and they might be able to blast quite a few Daemonettes back into the realms of chaos. It's a super risky strat, but it might just pay off. ODM Hanadins is controlling the Dawi, and his opponent is ODM Bohemond, in charge of an all-demon army with the exception of Sigvald the Magnificent. There's a big rework for him alongside the Warriors of Chaos update, but you still bring him for the same reasons. Dude often feels unkillable out there. He's got his own harem, he's the protagonist of his very own dirty anime, he's about to sliver slash his way through dwarf armor. The rest of the Slaneshi host is about as straightforward as it gets, purely demonic, 3 Furies, 5 Daemonettes, 2 Exalted Daemonettes, and a unit of Hellflayers, definitely the most vicious looking chariot in the trilogy, but traditionally its bark has been worse than its bite. It'll be interesting to see if it can lawn mow its way through sturdy shield walls on the dwarf side. Of course, even the Furies are hyper obnoxious to deal with. They can mulch an artillery crew in seconds and put the hurt on even the tankiest infantry with rear charges from behind. The dwarfs have no slows here, which has so often been the go-to strat for pumping the brakes on enemy rush armies. Aluris, anchoring the right flank, the only spellcaster in this battle, Lash of Slaanesh and Locust of Beguilement to debuff leadership and defense, but don't expect much in the way of leadership manipulation here, especially against the Dawi. This army is not reliant on terror, it is born and bred to kill and kill quickly. Those Exalted Daemonettes in particular are a right nasty piece of work. Let's see if they can do anything here. Sigvald will be the first to enter the fire arc of the flame cannons, and it's actually looking like he's going to get so aggressive as to be the only one that even approaches the range of these cannon crews. Now, interesting thing about that is that he'll of course be isolated, but his auric armor gives him so much regen that even if Belegar and the Thane look to duel him, he could probably just escape at some point, come back with like half health later on, not really be worse for the wear. There are not very many lords in Immortal Empires that can feel comfortable approaching an entire dwarf army by themselves. Sigvald can, and he's going to do just that as he dives into the phalanx and starts hitting them with that paragon of excess. Of course, Belegar and the Thane will respond, but Fabio is becoming what's known as a distraction carnifex here. Doesn't really matter what Sigvald does, as long as he occupies the enemy and keeps their focus and doesn't die, well, he'll give time for the real killers to close in like a giant pincer on both flanks. It's a clan war though, 2 quite talented players. Do not expect Hanadins to overcommit here. He knows the girls are the real problem. And while flame cannons are best for his tightly packed infantry, and Daemonettes are usually in loose formation, they're going to come to find out that the blessing of their patron is no protection against righteous dwarf napalm. Hot, sticky payloads, pounding them into submission on the approach. Expect those Daemonettes to be thinned out quite a bit before they ever touch melee combat. Here's the thing though, Furies on 3 flanks coming in from 3 different directions. They're going to go right for the flame cannons and the Irondrakes. Protecting all that with the build the dwarves have is going to be exceedingly difficult. And in fact, there is no physical way to protect that many ranged troops. Dwarves don't have the tools to do so. At least not in the traditional way, where you would keep sweeper units like Slayers on top of the cannon crews. So the Dwarfs will allow the Furies to start munching, and then look to burn them off immediately with point-blank volleys of flame from the Drake guns. Dragonback Slayers can only be in one place at any given time. No blasting charges to break the onrushing horde, so a lot of heavy lifting will need to be done by these Irondrakes who have already set their flamethrowers to purge. A lot of crumbling on the Daemonette rush already, mostly due to the flame cannons dealing a lot of damage on the way in and some really good point-blank volleys from the Irondrakes, ensuring that the Furies will not be around for too much longer. They do have terrible leadership, but even if their morale was somehow amazing, wouldn't expect them to be around for too much longer under that kind of deluge. Irondrakes are doing a great job of clearing the crews. Just need to be worried about friendly fire and big-time charges from the flank because the Hellflayers just got right in, sliced them up, creating space and time for the Exalted Daemonettes, who are going to be a massive issue out on both the right and left flank. And I think that the Slaanesh rush is really intelligent here in the way he's positioned his troops, because the elite ones are out on the flank and much less likely to be shot up by the flame cannons on the way in. Regular Daemonettes are pretty expendable. Losing 2 or 3 of those early, not a huge deal. As long as the Exalted are alive, they can butcher 2 or 3 full units of warriors and longbeards pretty much by themselves, maybe with only like the teeniest bit of support. Really nice fascination on the Irondrakes on the Dwarfs' left flank. Will rampage them, prevent them from firing in, and remember that even if you close them down in melee, if they're in guard mode, they will unleash torrents of flame at point-blank range, and that will devastate units like Daemonettes, so they can still fire, but if they're rampaged, they are forced into melee and cannot shoot at all. So really nice use of an army ability there. See, the Furies are actually proving the point. They're in melee with the Trollhammers, or rather the Irondrakes, and they're still shooting straight up. Still able to immolate and should be able to bug spray down those annoying armor-piercing mosquitoes. Big problem for the Dwarfs right now, though. Exalted Daemonettes are free. They've already killed off entire units of Dwarf Warriors, and they're collapsing in. There are Longbeards to stymie the tide for the moment. They're doing a great job of cutting through so many of these Daemonettes with the Irondrakes. Those Exalted Daemonettes, they are a breed above any other unit on the Slaaneshi side. They can buzzsaw their way through even elite Dwarf infantry in less than a minute if they get any support whatsoever. Rear charge from Furies, a rear charge or flank charge from that Hellflayer. It could get pretty ugly over on this side if the Dwarfs don't get some more flame cannon shots in, or get some point-blank volleys with those Drake guns. The artillery crews have been brave souls up to this point. I mean, they were immediately inundated with all kinds of AP troops. They survived the first attack, and they're still on their guns and still causing all kinds of carnage for the Dark Prince, who is obviously beginning to break down the battle lines here. As Dwarfs, there's nothing doing on that front. You are going to lose your formations. You're going to lose your cohesion. It's gonna happen no matter what against a faction with this much AP and this much speed. Just a question of how long you can hold on and how much damage your crews can do in the time they have allotted. Still firing. Pretty important on that front. Longbeards are holding against the Exalted Daemonettes for now. Interesting foot chases on both sides, actually, as the napalm continues to pour into the breach. There's a narcissism placed on one of the dwarf characters to help Sigvald get away, but then he rampaged, so he's really low and in danger of being overrun by the true dwarf characters who might be able to kill him off. But it looks like the rampage has ended, so he might be able to run away now. And then on the other side, Dragonback Slayers were being chased after by the other unit of Exalted Daemonettes, and they were able to get away, but they took a lot of damage turning their back and flank to those ponytailed prancers. The Hellflayer is still in real good shape, busting through the dwarf phalanx, getting directly into the Irondrakes and dealing a tremendous amount of damage on that front. Longbeards are doing exactly what they are supposed to do, which is just anchor the Dawi battle line to the best of their ability and give those Irondrakes more time to fire in. And this is exactly what Hanadin's needs, as the Dwarfs point-blank volleys into the rear and side of those Exalted Daemonettes, and it looks like they are going to crumble out. So that will be a big loss for the Slaaneshi Warhost. The Allurus and Sigvald are still alive. The Magnificent was actually able to escape from Belagar and the Thane, and that will just allow him more time to regen. One of the downsides, if you're the Dawi here, is Slaanesh pours in from the side. They do not have anything that can catch Sigvald or the Allurus on foot, and when it comes to Sigvald, if you can't catch him, that means he's regenning the entire time with his auric armor. He also has perfect vigor, which means in a late game scenario, when it comes down to a duel, he will have some advantages in terms of a straight melee fight with Belagar and the Thane, even if they're fighting him 2v1. Here come the Hellflayers. Big time flanking charge right down the battle line, and a full surround off for Slaanesh, that devastating flanker passive kicking in. Longbeards should be able to hold for the moment. They'll provide bodies so that Belegar and the Thane might be able to land some good attacks in on the chariot and take it down, at least take down 1 or 2 of its models. We'll see if that happens. But Sigvald and his auric armor, he's back up to relatively healthy. At least he's not going to be 1 or 2 shot from any of the characters. And he's going after Trollhammer torpedoes. He just sliver slashed them down. Showed absolutely no mercy whatsoever. Those ranged troops are gone for the Dwarfs now. And of course, the battle line is completely broken down. Nothing to protect the flame cannons or Irondrakes at this point. There's only the 1 unit of Irondrakes remaining. Allura's continuing to be very annoying with that Lash of Slaanesh, but doesn't deal tremendous amounts of damage. She'll have to run, but she's got 62 speed, so she's about double the mobility of either Belegar or the Thane. And that Hellflare, used very well up to this point, still retaining all 4 of its models. You can see the Dwarfs have just clicked a bunch of attack orders on it to try to take the chariot down, because that is a huge problem for the Dawi at the moment, as are these remaining Exalted Daemonettes. I think Belegar and the Thane might be able to cause a crumble on that front at least. They are losing their leadership. They're wavering now. The Dwarfs are running out of bodies here. Balance bar is about even, actually. Of course, Sigvald is regenning, and Dwarfs don't really have a good option to catch him or the chariot. They can pretty much only deal damage when the chariot commits. Dragonback Slayers would mulch it in seconds. They only have 40 armor, I think. The Hellflare only has 40 armor, so it does not perform well against Dragonback Slayers at all. But it has no reason to commit against them, and it's going to ensure the Trollhammers are... Irondrakes, bro! Making sure the Irondrakes do not come back. Doing a really good job on the outskirts of these engagements and forcing these phalanxes to run for the hills. Still, though, at some point, Slaanesh has to run into melee with Belegar and the Thane, and those guys are scary. Alaris is scary too, though. She can keep casting Locus of Beguilement every 90 seconds, and that is a powerful late-game debuff. Minus 8 LD, minus 24 melee defense. Belegar and the Thane, with minus 24 melee defense, they're going to be able to get hit a lot by the Daemonettes, by Sigvald, and by the Alaris herself. She's probably only 1 hit from death. The Dragonback Slayers are chasing after her on the edges of your screen. Daemonettes are going to crumble out to Belegar, and the buff that the Dwarfs are relying on right now is that Silver Horn of Vengeance, that plus 12 charge bonus. It's been activated 3 or 4 times this battle, and they're countercharging against the Hellflare, which is, I mean, it still has all of its models. It's still not lost a single chariot, with only a little bit of HP. Fascination is going to finish off those Dragonback Slayers entirely. I don't think any of them will survive that. We see them dropping now, and this is the definition of Pyrrhic and Torrid. Both armies in absolute tatters. Slippery activated by Sigvald for the melee defense and extra speed. Hellflares providing some mass and some AP to pin those dwarf characters in place. And Sigvald's auric armor has been a gigantic boon here. We've seen it so many times. That character just does not freaking die ever. Belegar and his Thane could hook up some Iron Warden's tankards and get some regen. They could probably have outlasted the Geld Prince, but in this situation, they do not have that regen. They do not have ways to get their HP back, and Sigvald, even if he did drop low here, he's probably pretty close to the healing cap, but he could still get a little bit more, and man, he's going back up to 1700, and it's too much for the Dwarfs. The balance bar is going to shift all the way. Belegar will fall. That will be your battle. Slaanesh will take it, but by a hair. I mean, that was about as close as a battle can possibly get. Well played from the Dwarfs in that one. Well played from Odium Bohemond and the Slaaneshi Rush army as well. So Hanadins with the flame cannons and the Irondrakes, they put in a lot of work for the Dawi for sure. Crumbled out quite a few Daemonettes before they ever closed into melee. Irondrakes got Furies off of their butts and did a lot of damage to the Exalted Daemonettes as well. Belegar and the Thane did a lot of damage to Sigvald, but of course it amounted to nothing because he just regens it. But he did have to run, and actually he was rampaged at a really inopportune time. He got very close to dying at one point there, but Dwarfs didn't have any mobility to capitalize on that, of course. A lot of Longbeards held out pretty well, and overall, I like the strat from the Dwarfs in this one. Exalted Daemonettes were freakishly good, as was the Hellflare, which, again, retained all of its models, which is absolutely bananas in the late game like that. Like, it was down to about 1/6 of its remaining HP pool, and it still had all 4 models. And every time it charged in, it was hitting stuff from the flank and rear, causing all kinds of problems. So really enjoyable to see that thing do well, because we haven't seen it a lot in Immortal Empires, but definitely, I'd say its bite was worthy of its bark in this one.